I think there's never been a better time or an easier time to be an entrepreneur than it is today. And I think that most people should think about the impact of AI almost as big as the impact of electricity on humanity. And so this idea of being afraid to fail is like, that should be your moniker. That should actually be the permission that you give yourself, because fail enough times and eventually you'll figure it out. The very large players are going to have a lot more of these small, tiny players eating away tiny little market share over and over again. And so you're going to see an explosion, in my opinion, of just these small, medium-sized businesses everywhere.
I've seen 18-year-olds, I've seen 17-year-olds start automation agencies, and they have a specific niche, whether it's plumbers or you name it, making 6 figures a month.
That's the name of the game. Humans aren't going to lose their jobs to AI. They're going to lose to other humans who know how to use AI.
Mohannad, my brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Nice to be here.
As we always start, what does freedom mean to you?
Is it really a thing? I don't know. I think that for the most part, I've always looked at freedom as a liberation of the mind, a liberation of your emotions, and really just being in a state where you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm not so convinced anymore. I think it's an elusive thought, and I think that freedom starts with you trying to liberate your mind first and foremost, trying to understand that societal norms and all of these constraints that are put on us are constraints. And I think that once you liberate yourself of these chains, then you can start liberating your mind and your emotion and your desire to accomplish certain things that are more for you, not because of what society dictates or tells you to do.
I like that. It's interesting. If you had to look back at your life growing up, and if you had to look at it more like from like a movie, as a movie, what would the title be and why?
The Life of a Chameleon.
Interesting.
I was born in Egypt, in Alexandria. My parents immigrated to Canada when I was 7 years old. It was a very difficult country to live in. It was a bunch of immigrants in the early 90s. My mom was the first veiled woman to go to the university in Montreal that she went to. And we stayed there just for a few years, moved to Abu Dhabi. I couldn't really figure it out here. It was very tough for an Arab kid transplanted to French Canada, then transplanted to Abu Dhabi in a school full of locals with kind of like really no true identity. And then after not making it here, I went to finish high school back in Egypt, back in Alexandria, finished that, went back to Montreal for university, and then kind of been traveling the world ever since. And so my life has been a life of adaptation and just kind of been transplanted from place to place to place. And so, yeah, I think I'm the ultimate chameleon, I guess.
I think, unfortunately, most people will not understand or will not experience how one can be shaped when you have, different cultures. You grow up with different cultures, different nationalities. However, which out of all the places you've been to, you feel like shaped you the most?
Yeah. I think that the most pivotal moment in my life that really shaped my identity is when I went to high school in Egypt. And I'm eternally grateful for having had that experience. I think I really struggled as a young boy being put in this sort of brand new environment, having to speak a different language. I went from speaking only Arabic to now being sort of having the French beaten into me. And then when I came to the UAE, I just kind of really had no identity. I remember I had like a weird traumatic experience, if you will, but we were in like art class and we were supposed to do some drawing or painting of something that represented our heritage. And so I drew a Mountie with pyramids in the background. And for those of you who don't know what a Mountie is, it's like literally a police officer, Canadian police officer riding a horse. It's very quintessentially Canadian. And my friends made fun of me. They're like, "What the hell is this?" Like, and then they drew like a cigarette on the guy, and they made it like a Marlboro Man or something. And so it was kind of like one of those moments. I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what I am." And I went down to Egypt, and I went to high school. And the first day of high school, I walked in, and I kind of still had no footing. I didn't know anyone. And I kind of just met this group of guys who are till today my best friends. And they welcomed me into their circle. And I learned kind of just a new language. It wasn't even just Arabic. I just learned the language of men. of honor, of independence, of truth, of all of these things that I think are just virtues, and of the things that I had aspired to become, and things that certainly I aspire for my boys to have as they grow up. And so that definitely cemented my identity. I am Egyptian through and through.
Yeah.
And all of these other things are just kind of like nice added bonuses, but that's who I am.
Nice. It's funny you say that because, I think I mentioned to you before that I also lived in Egypt for 2 years. And I also have spoken about how Egypt has also shaped me. What people don't understand is when you're in a place like Egypt, there's a bit of chaos, right? Like it's survival of the fittest, and your group or your environment really, like your parents aren't looking after you. Your mom is not coming, asking what time you're coming home. I remember being 10 and being lost. Like I'd want to play soccer and I'd find a place to go play, and then these guys want to go to another city or another street. I follow them. Next thing you know, everybody left, and now it's up to me to figure my way back. But just the culture, just the hustle nature. So many things I can get into, but it taught me one of the most important lessons in life, and that lesson is the ability to figure things out, right? And I think in a lot of the Western society today, we make it so easy for kids to just follow something, right? To not, we kind of preach freedom, independence, and creativity and all this bullshit, but we are molding kids in a certain way that we're not allowing them to literally live and find themselves and find their identity. So I don't know if you find the same thing now that you're in Montreal.
Well, I have 3 kids, 13, 10, and 8. And I can unequivocally tell you that this idea of freedom in the West is a complete lie, and it's a total fabrication. I think that you're being micromanaged and controlled, and your thoughts are actually being very closely monitored, and people may not realize it, but based on what you're watching and how you're engaging with society, access to the information on the internet and the things that you're just constantly being promoted to, you're actually being told what to think and how to think it. And the moment that you go countercurrent to that, or you voice your opinion or objection, then now you're canceled, you're a parasite, you're countercurrent, and so forth. I think that the ultimate freedom is really your ability to go and break things. And I don't think you're allowed to go break things in the West. I think we have the illusion that we can go break things, but that's not true. I spoke very publicly about what's going on in Gaza, and I can show you the mountains of hate mail that I received. I can show you the messages from the venture capital community that I'm involved with telling me you'll never be able to raise another $1 here ever again. A society full of hypocrites. And, it's not all like that for sure. There's a lot of good too, but I think for the most part, the erosion of values that has happened in the West and continues to happen, combined with the lack of true freedom, I think is ultimately going to be its demise.
Yeah.
And so when I go back to Egypt, I learned how to drive in Egypt, which, I call it controlled chaos.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's really no traffic lights. There's really no
there's
laws.
2 lanes, but there's like 7 cars.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. Like no one.
And so you just sort of accept your fate. You don't use your mirrors because the reality is, you're going to get cut off.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. And so I think that there is beauty in the chaos itself.
Absolutely.
And when you live in these societies, you lived in Boston, right? Like you live in these societies that are over controlled and every little thing. I don't think that that's right either.
Yeah. Now, I grew up in Boston. I lived there for 26 years. I've lived in Dubai for 8.5 years, lived in Egypt for 2 years, and a few other countries. I've traveled a lot. I'm sure you have as well. And it kind of makes me sad to say this, right? Because for me, growing up in America, a lot of my friends are from America. And I owe a lot to America because America gave me the opportunity to build myself, right? But after leaving the States, it's almost like, wait a second, like we've been made to believe that we are the greatest country. We're the only country that has freedom. We're so much better than X, Y, and Z. But I can literally, if I had to list off, the countries that I would live today, America would probably be the bottom of that list. I live in Costa Rica before America. I live in Dubai, obviously, where I live. I live in Saudi Arabia. So many countries. And the reason is, like you said, we preach one thing, but breed totally the opposite. If we're all about freedom of speech, you should easily be able to express your opinions about Gaza or anywhere else in the world. And they, as the leaders of democracy in the world, they should be open-minded. They should be open to your ideas. They should listen. They should see what is it that they're missing. Maybe you have a different point of view, a different insight that might shift the way they're thinking about Gaza. But as long as you say something that someone doesn't like and you're banished for that, I mean, isn't that the whole angle that they put on why Arabs in the West are ignorant, because we don't have a way of debating in a health form? So yeah, I mean, you're right. This is full of hypocrites.
I mean, I think fundamentally we can probably very clearly and unequivocally say that the democratic experiment has failed.
Absolutely.
Like, show me an example of democracy that works anywhere in the world. You cast your vote to some individual who's the better of the two bad choices that you have. They overtax you, spend your money on initiatives that you don't agree with. When you're in a high earning bracket in Canada, you're getting taxed over 50%, 50% of your income. And they do it in this like really annoying way where when you get your pay slip, they actually show you how much they've deducted and sent back to the government and the cumulative amounts. And then when April comes, which is tax season, they call you and they say, we think based on what you paid last year that this is how much money you owe us. And if you don't pay it now, we'll start charging you interest, even if you haven't filed your taxes yet.
Wow.
Meanwhile, they're funding, sex change operations that I don't agree with. They're funding wars that I don't agree with. Our roads are terrible. Everybody thinks healthcare in Canada, because it's free, is amazing. It's not. You wait at the hospital for hours and hours and hours. Often you even get turned away. Horror stories of people literally dying waiting just to see a doctor. So I don't think that the democratic experiment has worked. I don't necessarily have a better system to propose, but I think we owe ourselves and humanity better. And I think that what's happened is an over-pacification of humanity, where people are just, they're just happy to delegate responsibility. Someone else will do it. The official somewhere will take care of it. They never do. Generally, I think globally, no one is really happy with their leaders. And I just don't think that a few can rule everybody.
Yeah.
And I think we just need a better way.
Now, let's talk about entrepreneurship. I know that's one path to freedom that at least we were taught to pursue. Does that still exist, to freedom to start a business or have an idea and build something meaningful? And what has your journey been in starting your businesses?
I think there's never been a better time or an easier time to be an entrepreneur than it is today. I only ever had one full-time job in my life. And so I graduated the university and I worked in the IT department. And so I used to fix literally desktops and screensavers. And in the span of a year and a half, I made my way up to manage the entire server infrastructure of the university. It was very good, very dedicated. First one to show, last one to leave. And then one day my boss died. Heart attack, mid-40s or maybe late 40s. And they made a mistake, and somehow an email went around that showed what his salary was. And he was making like $80,000 a year. I'm like, wow, I'll have to wait 20 years to potentially maybe make, maybe it would be 90,000 whatever at the time. I'm like, I just don't think that that's for me. And so I started freelancing. Thankfully, I graduated, not very successfully, but graduated computer science. So I was a programmer. And at the time, coding was hot, and it was a desired quality. So I just started coding these little projects, and I'm like, I can actually do this for a living. I could be on my own. And back then, when I first started having this idea of I wanted to launch a company, the idea of actually just incorporating a business was very challenging. Today, you can incorporate a business in a matter of minutes on a website, right? And so if you think about what is required to build a business that produces income today, ideas are a dime a dozen. We are also going through probably what will be the single biggest technological leap, well, definitely in our generation, but maybe in our lifetime, and then some with everything artificial intelligence. And I think that most people should think about the impact of AI almost as big as the impact of electricity on humanity. You're adding intelligence into everyday life. You're being able to now, come up with creative and strategic and execution paths. We're seeing companies that are now producing or generating hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue with 15, 20, 30 employees. Historically, that's just never happened. And so when I started, it used to be that you would think that going from zero to kind of like a prototype of an idea that you can bring to market is kind of like an 18 months outlay, and you maybe need $500,000. Today, you can go zero to product in market in probably 30 to 60 days with 10 grand in investment. So I think this is the best path right now, the best time to start a company. And I love what you said. Entrepreneurship is absolutely the path to freedom. Financial independence, your ability to control your time, your hours, and what you do with your life trumps everything else, because this 9-to-5 job isn't for you. It's not for humans.
Yeah. But here's the thing with entrepreneurship. Almost everybody you talk to has an idea. They want to start a business. We can go talk to the guy working here and be like, yes, I wanted to start this. But most people never take that leap of faith. So is it because there wasn't AI or tools or things that made them getting started easier, or is it more of a mindset that's holding them back?
Yeah, I think people are afraid of failure.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest mistake ever. I think you learn through failure, and failure, I don't think we're taught to fail. That's just the truth. Like, I go back to my childhood, and I remember coming back home with like maybe a bad grade on my exam and getting chastised by my parents. Like, that shouldn't be the case. Mm-hmm. And so I think that fundamentally entrepreneurship should be taught as that, as like you give yourself the right to fail. So I'll give Canada credit for one thing. They have something called it's a tax credit program. It's called the Scientific Research and Development Program. And it's a law where for every dollar that you spend in R&D that hasn't been done before, the government gives you back 70 cents.
Interesting.
So that's great, right? They're literally giving you permission to fail, because that's where innovation comes from. If you think about like most inventions, they come from people experimenting. Most drug discoveries, most scientific breakthroughs have come from somebody dropping a beaker into something by mistake, or coming up with some theory in the middle of the night and going and testing it in the morning and it works. And so this idea of being afraid to fail is like, that should be your moniker. That should actually be the permission that you give yourself, because fail enough times and eventually you'll figure it out. I don't think that in the history of every great thing that's ever been invented, no one's ever gotten it right the first time.
Yeah. And that's why I actually have this show, right? Because my reasoning was, most people see success in the end. They see the outcome. Yeah. But then people come to the assumption that, oh, well, he's lucky, or he was in Canada, of course he made it. That's why he made it. Or look what his parents are. They don't understand that even though our outcomes might be different, but we start in the same path, and that's a path of uncertainty, path of struggle, failure, challenges. And my objective was, if they see that enough people that have started and that succeeded today, but they've also gone through the trials and tribulations that everybody else has to go through, you're not the only special one that has to make that decision. Yeah. I want to go back to AI, right? Because obviously, I mean, we've seen a lot of things that transformed not only our life but business, whether it's the cell phone, right? Internet, social media. Obviously, AI is the granddaddy of them all, right? It's the biggest transform. But most people, when they hear AI, they just think of, I use ChatGPT, right? Like I got a few prompts in me. How can entrepreneurs actually adopt AI in a way that can make them much, much more efficient as entrepreneurs and help them grow their businesses even faster? Yeah.
So I run a company called Work.com, which is in the automation space. And we focus predominantly on helping small and medium-sized businesses automate their internal processes using a combination of automation as well as artificial intelligence. And I would tell you that 80 to 90% of the use cases that we see, and I'm talking about plumbers, garage mechanic shops, law firms, property management companies. So 5 to 50 employees being small, 50 to 500 being medium. That's kind of the range that we operate in. 80 to 90% of the use cases are back office admin tasks. These are things like Mary in your finance team that's sitting there receiving invoices via email that she has to open, go into QuickBooks, look at the vendor, put in their information, submit it for payment, send a Microsoft Teams or a Slack message to her boss saying, can I approve this? Can I approve that? And so it's a combination of these admin tasks that are now starting to get sort of optimized using automation and AI. We're starting to see an interesting evolution using voice AI to automate some of the tasks like booking appointments or answering basic questions like, how much do I owe? Did I pay this invoice? Just the standard sort of fair questions. And then we're starting to see more and more the evolution of the creative. And so, if you're using it to potentially make show notes for your show, or, you're creating reports for your clients. And so what we're seeing is there's an elevation that's happening of what the human value within the workforce is being used for. Predominantly speaking, if you look at the corpus of your employees in an organization, some percentage of them, depending on the company, could be as low as 5%, it could be as high as 80%, do menial basic tasks every day. They're entering, data in a form, they're picking up the phone and saying the same thing over and over again, they're producing the same report. So let's get rid of that. And then, I don't want to say repurpose, but elevate the human to do more cognition type of functions. And so how can an entrepreneur use AI today to elevate themselves? It's exactly that. Get rid of all of the manual, mundane things that you and your team are doing, because honestly, it's just a waste of time in life. Get them to do higher value tasks, and then just optimize your business. And maybe even start more businesses. You know what I mean? This idea of being locked into one singular thing, I think it's over. Like we've opened Pandora's box. We are now going to be able to expand our capabilities significantly more. We'll see with the rise of quantum computing as well, what that's going to do, access to a lot more energy, access to the new versions of chips that are coming out, the new form factors. Once AI now gets embedded into physical devices, what will that do for you? I would love nothing more than to have a robot to pick up after my kids at home. Awesome. Okay, great. That's one less thing for me to do. Now you have companies like Cloud Kitchen, which is Travis's company. So he started Uber and then he left very famously. And now he has a new company called Cloud Kitchens, which is a predominantly robotics-based sort of kitchen outfit where you go and you launch your restaurant, you launch the concept, you go and prep the food, the robots make it 24/7, and it's only for Uber deliveries. So there's just a lot of things that are happening now, and there's just new concepts that are constantly developing. So it's a golden age now.
Okay, so you've talked a lot about, I've seen you've had some topics on building AI agents. But you're saying right now, like if I don't want to build an agent, I can just go to workflow or work.com and there's already agents built for me. I just need to do it. I let it know what my company does, what the functions I would all like. I'll give you an example just to get someone on the show, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of process. And the frustrating thing is I constantly need to check with someone, hey, did this person respond? Did that person confirm? Did they get back to you? Do they have the location? And you're right. Like I'd rather be focusing on something bigger, something that can actually help take the business to the next level, and that's not doing it.
Yeah.
So now with work.com, I can literally just give it the tasks that my company does, and it just automates the entire thing.
Correct. So the way that we conceptualized it was much like how our mothers used to tell us that we're very special.
Yeah.
We all think that our processes are custom and special. They're not. Like we all do the same things, more or less. True. There's nuance, of course, but the fundamental core steps of what a process or workflow is all the same things. And so we kind of just rethought the model in a different way. We said, well, instead of giving people this piece of software that they would have to customize, what if we just pre-built these small bits that are all the same for everybody? Like maybe you go on LinkedIn and you're looking for people that could join your show, and then maybe you'll send them an email or actually try to find their email first and then send them an email, and then you monitor your mailbox. And so like, what if we had these components pre-built and we gave you this kind of flow charting solution that you could connect these bits together? Would you be able to build it? That's basically what it is today. So yeah, you can come to work.com, just for the record, it's WRK.com, not W. And then from there, you can build your own automations. And we're not the only ones, There are tons of agentic platforms out there. And then if you're really keen and you have a little bit of technical skill, you can start using platforms like Cursor, which is a code generator platform. So if you know how to code just even a tiny little bit, or even just hire a programmer and just make them use Cursor, and there are other platforms like Lovable and others. They'll be able to produce what would have been a month of code in 2-3 days. And so I'll give an example, which we were about to launch. It's the Montreal Grand Prix coming up next week. And my friends are involved with hosting a lot of events around that. So they just get a tremendous amount of requests via text, via whatever, what's happening here. Okay, is it this event, or is it this dinner? Is it this party? Is it whatever? Is it this gala? And everybody wants access and they want tickets. But if you're a promoter, you're spending an obscene amount of time just fielding these. So now we just built an AI in 3 days that's going to field all of the questions, filter everything, prioritize them, pass them all to all the hosts so that they can prioritize who wants access to what their budget is, and it's going to optimize their entire operation. We built all of that in 3 days with Cursor. So, we built something like this. It'll probably make some amount of money for us. I don't know what it is, but something in 3 days. And so I think it's a great time and a great opportunity to really become a lot more aware of the tools that exist out there, because I think you can probably launch dozens and dozens of these widgets that will make you money. And I think if I'm a large software company, I'm terrified right now, because I think that you're going to have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of developers slowly chipping away at the market share that they've acquired. Because, and I give this specific example, if you're looking at your budget next year, and you're like, why am I spending $5,000 on DocuSign or $1,000 on Calendly when I can probably go and hire someone to clone them for the same price, but then I'll own it forever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think we're going to start seeing the sort of the transformation of software back into ownership versus renting. And I was just doing a talk at Web Summit. That was the topic. It was like SaaS, or what we call software as a service, is dead.
Right.
Renting of software is dead. And so we're coming full circle towards it.
Now, Mo, I've never coded. I made a little bit of HTML a while back in college days. I'm not that techie, more than the average person. Can I still use AI to do all the things that you're mentioning right now? Can I go learn how to code and do it maybe instead of 3 days, even if it took me a week? Yeah. Or is this something that, okay, sure, it might help me a bit, but if you're techie, it's going to take you...
No, it's there. So there's a platform called lovable.dev, I think. Lovable.something. I think it's .dev. And they've inversed the equation where you don't need to know coding. And so you start by describing your project, and then it guides you through describing your project better. So for instance, you can go and be like, I'd like to make a clone of Luma, which is this event booking platform, right? It'll tell you, okay, tell me how is yours different. So you'll provide like, okay, well, I only need it to do tickets. I don't really care about payment. Maybe it needs to be in Arabic. And then as you start describing it, it's actually creating an entire project plan for you, step by step. And then you'll see the project plan being broken down into, all right, well, we need to create a homepage. We need to create a sign up. We need to create login credentials, And then it'll give you sort of this breakdown of hundreds of tasks, and then you can start each task with the different levels of coders that it has, coding agents effectively, and it starts to build the code for you. And now I'll say it's not at 100%. It can't build complex things, but it can build medium complex things, and it'll get there with time.
Yeah.
So I don't if you have coding skills, definitely use a Cursor or something like it, or Copilot, GitHub's Copilot, because it helps you just get there faster. But if you're not, you can use platforms like Lovable. I forget, there's another one called, I think, Data Button or something that does something similar as well. So, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe OpenAI is starting to license fully independent AI agents as well that have various degrees of strength. And I believe that a PhD level AI goes for like 20 grand a month or something, right? So look, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that. We've figured out that these neural networks and these RAG models are good enough to be close to what we need them to produce. You've probably seen from all the announcements, like what Abu Dhabi is building, this AI campus, 500 billion or whatever the amount is. NVIDIA, I think, is going to be worth $100 trillion eventually with all the chips that they're producing. I think everybody's trying to play catch up with figuring out how to create more and more of these chips that are going to be more and more powerful. Does the rise of quantum computing tied in with chips accelerate the path? I don't know. I think there's a lot of speculation right now, but certainly with what we're already seeing, it's pretty sophisticated.
Now, when social media came out, with Facebook and Instagram, sure, it helped entrepreneurs thrive even more. But what actually came out, as you probably saw, is a lot of agencies came out, right? A lot of agencies are now using social media to help small businesses.
Sure.
Now, do you think that there's still room for that? Do you think now there's room for people to master AI to help businesses thrive and grow and become more efficient? Or do you think the entrepreneurs themselves are like, wait a second, I can just do this myself. No need for an agency to help me with this.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room. We certainly see a lot of it. A lot of people come in because we are subject matter experts, and it's not that they don't want to try it themselves. They realize when it comes to certain types of workflows that are not quite mission critical, but important enough to run the business, you want to make sure that they're done right. And in some cases, you are running mission critical things. Imagine an automation that does your payroll, or invoices your clients, or touches money in general, or anything that has safety or quality control involved. We're doing something right now, which is again kitchen specific, that monitors the sort of people prepping food for quality control. And so if someone sneezes into the food, you kind of want to flag it. And so you want to make sure that these things are done absolutely well and accurately. So there's always going to be room for agency. And then also don't forget that the entire world doesn't move at the same pace. Yeah. And so it may move very quickly, perhaps in North America, but there's still a ton of room in the Middle East. Certain parts of Europe are going to take longer because of regulatory frameworks. Certainly Africa, parts of Asia. So there's always going to be room for agency, and there's always going to be room for new ways of packaging things. Fastest selling thing that we're seeing these days is voice agents. Yeah. Can you actually replace your receptionist, or can you replace the person who's, again, doing your very basic customer support, answering the same question over and over and over again? It used to be the old IVR, like press 1 for this, and then I'll give you our hours of operations or whatever. This is now changing into, hey, how much do I owe you? Yeah. And then it'll actually log into the billing system, find out who you are, tell you the information that you need, grab your credit card info on the phone and process the payment. That's kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I remember when we used to do ads for dentists back in the day. And one of the biggest problems we had is that the ad would work, but when they call in to make the appointment, Bertha is not in a good mood.
Yeah.
Or she doesn't feel like talking to Bob, or doesn't want to answer the phone, or she's on her lunch break, and all of a sudden the patient's not booked. And then the guy would come and like, wait a second, you guys are not performing. We're like, well, wait, no, you actually had 15 calls, but no one booked an appointment. So now with AI, you don't need Bertha, you don't need anybody. Right. You can automate the whole process.
Yeah.
Now with AI, obviously, there's a lot of pros. But just as I was mentioning now, if you don't need Bertha anymore, or Mary at the front desk, you're probably not going to need a lot of other people in any, in a lot of the companies out there. How is it going to affect society, and what do you think people can do to ensure that they don't get left behind in this revolution?
It's a big topic, and I think a lot of people are thinking about it and talking about it. Look, I'll give you two views. And I'll reserve mine to be kind of the second one. But I think the general community is talking about things like universal basic income, because you're going to deal with a fairly large displacement of people out of the workforce. The estimates are anywhere from like 300 million to 1 billion people being displaced out of their regular jobs. Truth is, we just don't know, right? But the same thing kind of happened when, not necessarily the phone, but maybe the internet came out, and it moved a lot of people out of the workforce, because then things came online, you had more systems and whatever, but it also created a ton of new jobs. And so we just don't know yet what new jobs are going to be created because of this new economy. Is it going to create a tremendous amount of entrepreneurs that now actually you have a lot more people that are starting these small businesses that require 4, 5, 6 employees, and so they're going to suck them from the larger corps and so forth. Like I said, I think the very large players are going to have a lot more of these small, tiny players eating away tiny little market share over and over again. And so you're going to see an explosion, in my opinion, of just these small, medium-sized businesses everywhere. These guys and girls that are, have 3 or 4 employees making $1 million, $2 million, $5 million a year, and they're very satisfied because it's a lifestyle business, and they pay their employees, and they just took them away from the large players. So we don't know yet. And to give you an example of some of the new jobs that are being created because of AI, so Waymo, which is the self-driving car. So if you haven't seen it, just look it up on YouTube. But it's a literal self-driving taxi. They're in San Francisco and a number of different cities in the States. You get in the car, there's no driver. You sit in the back seat, and it drives you to wherever you want. Now, a small little challenge happened with those cars. Sometimes it kind of gets stuck in a loop. And so there was a story of a guy who, I think he was in a parking lot or something, and the car couldn't figure out its way out, and it just kept circling him around the parking lot for like 10, 15 minutes or something, until he called in and he's like, dude, you got to get me out of your car. And so that created the need to have a command center, right? So now you have command centers monitoring and managing these autonomous machines because, well, yeah, sometimes they're going to not perform as well as they should. And so that's a whole new field that, wasn't there before. So AI safety and AI control, I think, is going to become a thing in general. So that's kind of like just one example of that. But I think for the most part, I don't know if the number of net new jobs that will be created will match the mass exodus of kind of low value tasks that were being done by humans in the past. But that just also demonstrates how dumb we were to even have these jobs to start with, to be honest with you, right? And so I think that's going to create a new calibration or a new recalibration, and this may create a cataclysmic event in that I think just most societies cannot handle that level of unemployment. But then it begs the question, like, okay, great, well, if all of these companies are making so much money selling products to humans who can't afford to pay for them, then what are they creating them for? So we don't know where this equation is going.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see, but certainly some of the rich countries are speaking very publicly about universal basic income. We've kind of had this experiment in Canada during COVID where they paid people literally to stay at home, and it was chaos. Like when COVID restrictions were lifted, people didn't want to go back to work. They just got addicted to stay at home, eat, drink, play video games, whatever. They just became lazy. And I don't think that's what human nature is, either. So that's what the general community is talking about. Personally, I think about this as like it's at a fork in the road of where human society goes next. And it's an incredible opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves as a society. And I think that we need to change how we value money. We need to change how we value the exchange between one another. And I think we need to completely get rid of this idea of selling value for time. You go work at a job 9 to 5 and you're getting compensated per hour. You're not getting compensated per outcome.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's right anymore. If I'm really good at what I do and I can use AI tools to be able to produce the same outcome that someone else takes 6 hours to do, but I can do it in 20 minutes, why am I getting the same compensation? That's not right.
Sure.
And so I think we're going to hopefully start to see civilization evolve where we start to value things that needed to be valued better, more. So things like our ability to create. So not just the creator economy, but things like art, things like our connections with one another, my network that I've developed over the years. I think these things are going to start to become more high value. And this idea of, I spent 7 years studying whatever may or may not be relevant, but this idea of having a Microsoft certified, gone,
that's
right?
Irrelevant,
Yeah. So I think we're at an intersection, and we have an opportunity to use things like cryptocurrency, to use things like, AI tools to no longer ascribe to these societal norms that have been forced onto us. This is our opportunity to get off of the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And do something about it.
So let's just say that Joe's watching this or Mary's watching this and she's like, I agree. I want to get off this. I want to get out of the matrix. Yeah. What action steps can they take to evaluate what opportunities are out there? As you know, business in the simplest form is we're solving a problem, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes the question is like, what problem can I solve? And before you had to have a certain skill and get all these certifications, but today you don't even need to do. So what steps can people take to make that leap?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is you need inspiration. And inspiration can come from all sorts of different places, but like a simple example could be you can go to a website like acquisition.com, where it's people trying to sell their businesses, their small businesses. Mm-hmm. And you can just see like what are people buying and selling today. Oh, there's 50 websites that are trying to sell AI agents. There's 50 websites that are trying to sell e-commerce platforms. There's 50 websites that are trying to sell, accounting services or whatnot. And so you kind of start to see trends emerge a little bit. I love this new AI platform called Perplexity. They have a new thing, which is kind of like a news aggregator that I find to be the most interesting news aggregator because it's like an AI driven based on your engagement with the AI. And I think cutting through the bullshit news and getting to the real crux of like what's happening, I think you need to start thinking about what will some parts of the world look like in a few years from now. And so if we close our eyes and empathize and sort of like, okay, project in the future in 5 years from now, okay, maybe there are certain physical form robots in everyone's household. Okay, cool. Well, what are some of the tangential businesses that could be built around that? So for example, when the iPhone came out, if you would have invested in Corning, which is the company that makes the glass for the iPhone, man, you would have made a killing. So what are these periphery businesses that sort of relate to the mainstream thing that will occur? So for instance, in the AI world now, everyone is talking about energy. Okay, well, if the big thing is going to be nuclear power stations and it's going to be more solar and it's going to be, renewables, or it's going to be maybe fission or whatever, like, again, what are some of these what if I went and like started a scrap metal business to try and extract lithium out of all of the scrap metals? You know what I mean? So I think you have to kind of be smart with the trends that are happening and where, and just get inspiration from either people that are selling things online or businesses online straight up. There's tons of trade shows where people are talking about, the latest and greatest and things. They're not always the best, but at least you can get some ideas and motivation from there. And really just take the time to educate yourself about where the future is headed and try and think of the things that are going to happen in 5 years from now, because that's the time that you need to invest in them in right now.
So what you're saying right now, even though, I agree, like a lot of people are looking at this AI, oh my God, it's going to replace my job and everybody's going to be, but the truth is, it is the best time ever to get things started, because any problem that you have instant solutions in front of you. For me, like, I'll give you one thing. I was talking to my wife yesterday, and a lot of, because I'm a marketer, I'm a writer. A lot of times she would message me, be like, "Hey, can you write an email to the school because we need to, like, I got this email from this person, or write an email to the principal and talk about this." And I would write all the time. I should be calling me. I'm in a meeting, but now, guess what? I've given her a simple prompt. I'm like, okay, listen, here's how you use this thing.
Sure.
And then she was still sending me, but it takes me 2 seconds to just look at, like, good enough in her voice. But it still surprises me the amount of people that are still not using AI, right? There's still a lot of people who have not still adopted social media.
Yeah.
How many businesses that that they are not listed or they don't have a, So for me, actually, assessing this, I've seen 18-year-olds, I've seen 17-year-olds start automation agencies, right? And they have a specific niche, whether it's plumbers or you name it, making 6 figures a month.
So that's the name of the game. So if I were to start, if I'm Joe right now and I'm listening to this and be like, okay, cool, what do I do with all of this? It's very simple. Whatever local society or neighborhood you live in, everybody needs home services. They need a plumber, they need an electrician, they need lawn mowing, all of that, right? It's summer now, so pool season, right? Okay, great. Well, what if you're none of those things? But what if you could become a booking service? So why don't you launch a little website where you offer pool cleaning services, you offer lawn mowing, you offer whatever. You have an AI voice agent that's going to reply to all the phone calls. All you're doing is you're just booking and taking appointments. You take those and you actually call the plumbers, the electricians, and whatever. You send them these service calls and you charge them a fee for it. You literally start a home services business in an afternoon as just purely nothing more than a booking agent, right? You want to take it a step further? Okay, well, every single dental clinic is making phone calls to remind their clients for, their appointment bookings or whatever.
Can I say something about that? Yeah. The average dentist has 1,700 overdue patients.
There you go.
This means someone who missed one appointment, but the staff got too busy to call them back. And they just are lost. And you just call them and remind them, be like, hey, you're overdue. It's your 6 month, and no one's doing that.
That's right. So, learn to use the technology. Learn to use it because, and I didn't make this statement, but the most well-known statement in AI right now is that humans aren't going to lose their jobs to AI. They're going to lose to other humans who know how to use AI.
Absolutely.
And that's just truth.
One thing I wanted to touch upon is that you've sold a company. SweetIQ, is it? SweetIQ, right? For a pretty decent amount. Was 2017?
In 2017, correct, yeah.
So my question is, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who start a business, they love it. 3 years in, 4 years in, 5 years in, they don't love it as much. 6, 7 years in, it's still doing okay, but they can't exit. So how should someone build a business that could be exited for a lucrative amount versus those who end up being stuck in their business?
There's a saying in the sort of like M&A world where companies are bought, they're not sold. And what this really ultimately means is it's someone who's buying you. It's not a company that's buying you. And so the advice that usually we give founders, and I'm involved in a number of M&A transactions right now with companies that I'm involved with, is to you have to find a champion who wants you and as a byproduct, the product and the company that you've built. And so I don't really know that you can build a company to be exited unless if you're building a key core piece of technology that you know someone is going to need in the future. So if we go back to what I was saying earlier and we say, okay, close your eyes, what's the world going to look like in 5 years from now? And then build a piece of technology that you think is going to be of high value in 5 years from now. Okay, great. But that's what we call deep tech, right? Like this is like research and development stuff. You're building a company because you're building true core IP, and that IP, intellectual property, will eventually be bought. The example to think about is, I think it was a French company that developed the face scanner that ended up being your face unlock for the iPhone. And Apple just bought them outright because they were the best ones and they didn't want anyone else to have the technology. And there's dozens and dozens of examples like that, right? So if you're going to build true core deep tech technology, amazing. People are going to acquire you for that. However, if your business is kind of like what we call a wrapper business, i.e. you haven't really built any core technology, you're combining a bunch of things together, and your business is really all about sales, marketing, distribution, which is what your competitive moat is, then what you need to do is just build relationships. Your buyer is going to be one of your biggest clients or your partner or somebody who is potentially a competitor who's now threatened because of you because you're taking too much market share. You want to be sold, become someone's pain in the ass, where they can no longer deny you and they're like, oh my God, these guys over and over again, they're stealing our clients, they're taking this, they're at every trade show, they're, bad-mouthing us. It doesn't matter. But you need to be a thorn in someone's behind, or you need to become someone's undeniable champion where they cannot live without you. So when we sold, and it was part luck, part sort of create your own luck, we were raising a round of financing. We got a term sheet. It was very sizable from a fund in New York City. And I asked the question to the partner to say, I want to talk to a company that you've invested in. I wanted a reference. And he ended up introducing us to a company that was using our biggest competitor that they had invested in. And I got on the phone with the CEO and she said, tell me what you do. So I explained it to her. She goes, oh, you're a competitor of this company. I go, yeah, we're a direct replacement. In fact, we have part of our platform allows you to do a conversion immediately. And she goes, great, we hate them. And we want to get rid of them. And I said, great, well, I'd love to earn your business. She said, can you come to LA tomorrow? I said, I'm on the next flight. So I went to LA and I walked into the boardroom and all of her VPs and executives were there. And by the end of the meeting, they're like, yeah, you're not here because we want your product. We're here because we're actually potentially interested in buying you. And so when you create value is either going to be in the deep technology that you've built or your ability to be a true replacement or an exchange or just a value add for that organization. And that's always just going to come from you finding an internal champion, and then that internal champion is going to go to bat for you. Because then, are companies really ever worth what they say that they are? There's a litany of investment bankers that will show you 15 different financial models as to why they're going to value you this way. At the end of the day, the value is whatever the acquiring entity believes they're going to get from a benefit from you is going to be. Yeah. And so when you have an internal champion, they can do that for you. When you don't, I think that's impossible to sell.
Now, you've also, I think, you have a big brother or big sister community where you mentor a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially those starting up, they think that you need money. You need a certain amount of capital to get started. And it might be true in some cases. Yeah. If that's the case, how do you go about, if someone's needs to start up capital and they're going to VCs, what is it that they need to make sure that they bring forth to the VCs so that they can get some capital?
Yeah. So I always tell founders 3 things. Yeah. First off, it's a mindset shift. VCs are professional money people. Yeah. It's their job to actually give money and invest it into companies. And so I know it's sort of like a symbiotic relationship where we both need each other, but I believe that the VCs need the entrepreneurs more than the other way around. Because the reality is we can bootstrap and we can probably figure it out, but not the other way around. You can't make money, just make more money, right? You need to invest it into something. And so I ask every single founder that I work with to change their mindset, where the VC is not doing you a favor by writing you a check. You're doing them a favor by bringing them on to your journey, because all they're going to do is write you a check and then you're the one doing all the work, right? And so I think that it's important to just start with this mindset shift. If you have a great idea, don't go just begging for money. Investments are made over time and over relationships. And so I think founders make this big mistake of thinking, oh, I'm just going to go into the pitch and then I'll walk out of it with a check. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. VCs are going to want to follow you for some time, make sure that you're legit. Standard VC is going to receive 300 to 1,000 pitches a year. That's a lot. So why would they invest in you, when they're most of the time, like a seed stage fund might make 20, 30 investments a year out of 1,000, a later stage fund might make 5 or 6. So it's a small odds kind of game. And in order for you to break through the noise, you need to just under promise and over deliver and just constantly keep them up to date. And so what I tell my founders is go and meet the VCs. All of them host events all the time. They're not that easy. They're not that difficult to get into. Get to, introduce yourself to the VC, tell them what you're working on, tell them that you're going to keep them updated, actually do it, send them an email every couple of weeks. Here's what we did. Here's the pilot that we did. Here's the new thing that we released. Here's a video of what we're doing. And just kind of stay top of mind until such point where you become undeniable. And that point will become when you make some big breakthrough. But if you're constantly in this like begging, like I need the money to get started, no one's going to really pay attention to that. So find another way of bootstrapping yourself. Usually, I don't know what it's like here in the UAE, but certainly in North America, there's tons of government programs where you can get subsidies of like 10,000, 20,000, whatever, just to kind of get your idea off the ground. Friends and family is always another way of doing it. And then the kind of last piece of advice that I usually give founders as it relates to VCs is don't sweat it too much. Everybody is really enamored with this idea of raising venture capital. It's a brutal thing because the moment that you take money from them, the expectations are completely different.
Right.
Now you need to grow significantly faster. Now you have a board that is sitting on top of every single decision that you're making. The expectations are much higher. It also means that you've just given up at least 20% of your company at every single round of financing that you do.
Right.
And so, I need $50,000 to get up and running. You're ready to give up 20% of this idea that you're going to invest the next 5 to 7 years into just for 50 grand? Why don't you find an alternative way of financing these first few steps, get to some bigger progress, now go raise $500,000? Because you're still going to give away that 20%.
Right.
So you're giving up at least 20% every single round of financing. Just remember that. That's a huge amount of equity to give away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who've raised money and they've regretted it because either number one, they were forced to move a lot faster than they were able to and they were ready for. And even worse, when the business actually became successful, they realized that they undervalued themselves. And that's why I think on our last conversation, I talked a lot about bootstrapping, right? Because a lot of businesses, at least to test the idea, test the concept, you can get it out and at least see what kind of demand is there for it. And maybe, you might not even need the kind of money that you think you do, right?
The best way to finance your business is make sales.
Absolutely. Right.
That's it.
And that's the other thing. So I don't know about you, like one of the first questions I ask whenever somebody says to me, hey man, we need capital. What are you going to do for it?
Yeah.
And if they say anything but sales and marketing, I don't even pay attention.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, we need this location. No. If from $0 to $1 million, if you're not there yet, everything should go into sales and marketing. Once you get there, then obviously now you have the business that can fund itself and you've got a proven concept and you've got something that's actually in demand. Now you can take a bigger, more risk. But I've seen people literally take 50% of their capital, rent the most luxurious space they can find, A-level furniture, the best logo design consultant, furniture. I mean, you name it. And at the end of the day, it's like, how do you have any marketing capital left? And they don't know. They look at you like you've got two eyes.
Yeah, and I think too the other thing is a lot of founders also make the mistake of not investing in organic.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, I need to raise $500,000 to go buy paid ads. That's not a way to grow your business.
Right.
If you're relying purely on paid to grow, you'll never succeed. You need organic to work for you very, very well. You need referral, you need channels, you need all these other means that bring in revenue.
Right, because once you have something that's working for you organic, now you can just double up and put more more money behind it because you already know the message is working, you already know the audience is responding to it.
Exactly.
But when you're taking the money to a cold audience that you don't even know, you haven't tested anything yet, that's gambling.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we're in the last leg of this episode. 5 years from now, where do you see the world that we live in today in terms of work, in terms of technology? Yeah, just how you let's future pace.
Yeah, so I choose to lead with positivity on this one just because I'd rather be optimistic than pessimistic about the future of the world. And I think that humans are incredibly tenacious, and I think we have an incredible ability to be able to reinvent ourselves in better ways. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. So I'm not going to focus on the worst part yet because I just don't know how bad it gets before it gets good. But the good is going to be a move away from this ridiculousness of 9 to 5 job. I think we're going to have so much more of our time back. We're going to have tons of robotics and tons of access to these intelligent systems that are going to do a lot of these menial things that we don't want to do anymore. And I think we're going to recover and come back to what society used to be, which is connecting with each other, creating together, living in a more hopefully homogeneous society. I don't quite know how we're going to value money. I think cryptocurrencies is going to play a tremendous role. And I hope that we're going to start seeing the fall and demise of these controlled societies and governments.
I hope so.
Maybe not in the next 5 years, but in some not too distant future.
Yeah. I'm aligned with that. I'm into that. I mean, I think whatever is happening right now is not working. For me, that's obvious. More and more people, I mean, mental health. I mean, as you can see, like, technology is progressing. We're getting better cars. The way we're communicating, there's so many different alternatives. But human beings seems like the only thing that's still regressing, right? Like people are more depressed, more anxious, more stressed. And most of that is just because people are still not able to fulfill their purpose. They're not able to fulfill their potential. And I think once people see that there's so many things here to help them, whether it's AI or some other form of technology or tool that's going to come out, you know, I think these things are there to help them, right? Not to compete against them, not to take away their jobs necessarily, but there to allow them to express who they really are. Because I feel like in this world we all have a purpose, and if you're not living to your purpose, this is why a lot of people don't like 9 to 5. Because I know people who have 9 to 5, but they love it. Yeah, that's because it's something that they actually are meant to do. Yeah. But if you're not doing what you're meant to do, it doesn't matter what it is. Eventually you're gonna find yourself in a hole that you might not be able to get out of. And I think a lot of people are waking up and realizing that the status quo is not okay and it doesn't work, and they need to break through the chains, and they are breaking through it, and they're showing others how to do it. Absolutely. And that's the exciting part. And you're doing that yourself. So absolutely. This is why I'm doing this. And this is, last thing I want to say about this is that sometimes people think like whenever you find your purpose, something that should make you happy, something that you should be excited about. But the truth is, I don't like being in front of the camera. It's not something that I don't hate it, but it's not my thing, right? But I understand at the end of the day, having someone like you here, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience, there might be one person that gets value out of this. There might be one person who might have been stuck before the show, before this episode, at a job or something that they didn't like, but all of a sudden your story has given that person the inspiration that they needed to take action, right? And that's why I think we need to do something, whether we like it or not. Last part is quick-fire questions. Yeah. Favorite book? The Alchemist. Love that. Paulo Coelho. Yeah. What would you say is your superpower? Adaptability, for sure. Adaptability and relentlessness. Okay. Never give up on anything. Nice. That can be good or bad as well. Yeah, sure. Who would be your dream dinner guest? I've been thinking about this one a lot. Probably Malcolm X. Malcolm, interesting. A lot of people say Muhammad Ali, which is one of my favorite. Do you have a life motto? Say what you mean what you say. I like that. Something in your bucket list still yet to be checked off. Oof. Damn, I don't think so. Oh, man, I've done so much. Interesting. Yeah. Lucky. Definitely. Who's inspired you the most? My dad. Nice. Your biggest fear? Running out of time. Oof. What would you want your legacy to be? To be an agent of change. I like that. And then the last question, anybody watching here who also wants to pursue and achieve their own freedom, what's the last advice you would give them? Just do it. Just do it. All the tools, all the things that you need are here. They're in front of you. See that all of these systems are in place just to put controls around you. Break free now. Amazing. Mohannad, appreciate your insights. Very, very valuable take on so many different things, especially AI, especially about you can come from anywhere and achieve anything. I think that's really what I saw when I read your story. And that should be an inspiration to everybody watching this. So thank you for being on the show, and hope you guys enjoyed it. There you go. Thanks for having me.